What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. I've been wanting to make this video for quite a while, but this recently came up in the headlines. I'm sure you guys have been following it. You know, Trump has issued a whole host of executive orders, and the Democrats have been saying quite a bit that, oh, this is unconstitutional. This is a constitutional crisis, I hear them saying. So it's funny that now they're feeling how we felt for the last 4 years. It's funny in that way. What's not funny is how they have intentionally misinterpreted the 14th Amendment and the, 1968 Immigration Act and all these other things to bend that to their will so they could include things like birthright citizenship. And so today I want to try to provide you guys with the talking point. Quickly, I'm going to provide you with the talking points that the left uses all the time, and activist judges. They use this to misinterpret the 14th Amendment, and I want to clear the air on that and show you guys and talk to you guys about original intent, because what did they mean? What was the intention, the purpose of the 14th Amendment when it came about? So we're going to dive deep into this. I had to write a whole bunch of stuff down. I've done a whole bunch of research on this. The whole reason for videos like this is to hopefully encourage discussion and conversation down below in the comments. I know it's not quite the same thing as calling up your buddy and talking to them about it on the telephone, because you get that feedback instantly, but at the same time, this is the best we have, guys. So I encourage you guys that are my friends, let's talk about this. Pick holes in my argument. Don't take any of my word for any of this stuff. This is just what research that I found. And, I'll be honest with you, when I look for things, I'm looking for it with my conservative bias in mind, so I'm not trying to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not neutral. I'm coming at this from a conservative, libertarian type, ultimate liberty type philosophy. So let's dig into this and see what you guys think. Got to get my anti-communist glasses on because this first part, it's pushing the envelope here. And this is one of the ways that the communists, I've talked about the 45 goals of the communists. This is one of the ways that they've done this. They've used our judicial system and our courts and stuff against us, and our own Bill of Rights against us to implement their will. So not what the founding fathers had in mind, not what, the United States wants or what's best for us. No, instead what's best for them. So first part of this is how leftists and political activist judges misinterpret the 14th Amendment. They do it all the time. They do it on media all the time as well. So hopefully this will also provide you guys some talking point, argument points that you can fire back when people are saying, oh no, it says, it includes everybody born here in the United States. It doesn't quite say that. So let's dig in. From the ACLU website. Go check it out if you don't believe me. So here's what they said about it. At the ACLU, we know that denying citizenship to the U.S.-born children is not only unconstitutional, it's also a reckless and ruthless repudiation of American values. Birthright citizenship is part of what makes the United States strong and dynamic as a nation that it is. This order seeks to repeat one of the gravest errors in American history by creating a permanent subclass of people born in the U.S. who are denied full rights as Americans, which I find that last statement a little bit interesting, because people that are honest will admit that the left and the right have both been putting up roadblocks, so to speak, to stop the actual Congress from addressing immigration head on. They always want to include some sort of amnesty and stuff like this, and they're always wanting to add to it before the Democrats will cave on any kind of an immigration bill. So that's one of the reasons things don't get passed. But also in the past, again, we're being honest here, the Republicans have also done things that have made it easier for these illegal immigrants. They may have different reasons for that, like in the past, a lot of the Republicans were the business owners and stuff like that. So they wanted to get that cheap labor, right? That's how it used to be. Well, now you're seeing a shift, at least since MAGA came onto the scene, in how we deal with all that. And I think the American people that consider themselves Republicans agree a lot more with the MAGA position than they did the old Republican position of just look the other way and use this free labor. So continuing on with what the ACLU had to say about this. They say, we will not let this attack on newborns and future generations of Americans succeed. Below, we detail how the Constitution and decades of legal precedent protects us from this egregious overreach by the Trump administration. So they're specifically referring to Trump's executive order to ban birthright citizenship. And I just want to say right quick, I think that what Trump did there in this one particular instance is quite brilliant, because he knew, most likely, he knew, and the lawyers around him knew, that this would not make it through the all these activist judges and their courts and stuff like this, the Ninth Circuit and all these other courts that tend to throw roadblocks at a lot of the president's, actions and things like that. I think Trump knew, and his people knew, that this wasn't going to make it through, and it was going to be forced in front of the Supreme Court. So that's good news, because they're going to have to actually face this head on, the Supreme Court, and they're going to have to define and state what not only the original intent that we're fixing to talk about, but what the 14th Amendment means today. So they claim that the Constitution protects birthright citizenship. With extremely limited exceptions, the 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause provides that all children born in the U.S. are citizens. The birthright citizenship rule comes from English common law and dates back centuries. So this rule was briefly rejected by Dred Scott versus Stanford when the Supreme Court denied citizenship to the descendants of slaves, okay? They admit it right here. This is, again, still from the ACLU's website. They admit that the whole thing was about Dred Scott and Sanford and had to do with the ownership of the descendants of slaves. This shameful attempt to deprive natural-born Americans of their rights was later rectified by the 14th Amendment, which had safeguarded birthright citizenship ever since. So, sort of. See, that's the problem with a lot of the liberal arguments, is they give you half-truths based on henpecking or selectively picking the words that they want to focus on in the 14th Amendment, right? They're not saying the entire thing, though, and we're going to get to that, why this is brilliant what the Trump administration did, because I believe the Supreme Courts are going to look at this and they're going to rule once and for all that the original intent of the 14th Amendment had nothing to do with illegal aliens. In fact, it excluded them. So anyway, moving on. This is what they say at the ACLU. The Citizenship Clause states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Today, there's only one group that is not subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. and thus does not attain birthright citizenship. Children born to foreign diplomats who are protected by sovereign immunity and are therefore not subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. So let me ask you for a moment, why do you think that the people in the 1800s, when they wrote this, including Lincoln and another senator we're going to talk about, why do you think they put that in there? It specifically does not apply to children born to foreign diplomats who are protected by sovereign immunity and are therefore not subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. They clearly spelled it out in the 14th Amendment, or when they were talking about, the creation of the 14th Amendment, the surrounding documents and discussions that went on. So whether a U.S.-born child's parents are U.S. citizens does not impact whether that child is a citizen. The principle was upheld, they say, in the United States versus Wong Kim Ark, in which the Supreme Court confirmed more than 100 years ago that a child born in the U.S. to Chinese parents, who at the time were prohibited from becoming U.S. citizens, was a citizen under the 14th Amendment. Okay, so when they pull things like that up, you have to not be afraid of it, and you have to go look into it yourself. Oftentimes you can find summaries of these Supreme Court cases and you'll get the basic gist of it, and then if you need to dig in deeper, you can. But I went and dug in pretty deep to this Wong Kim Ark versus the United States. So what happened was, in 1898, the Wong Kim Ark Supreme Court case, once again in a ruling based strictly on the 14th Amendment, concluded that the status of the parents was crucial in determining the citizenship of the child. So the current misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment is based in part upon the presumption that Wong Kim Ark ruling encompassed illegal aliens, okay? That's what the liberals are arguing. But in fact, it did not address the children of illegal aliens and non-immigrant aliens, but rather it determined an allegiance for legal immigrant parents based on the meaning of the word domicile. Since it's inconceivable that illegal alien parents could have a legal domicile in the United States, the ruling clearly did not extend birthright citizenship to children of illegal alien parents. So let me say that again. The ruling clearly did not extend birthright citizenship to the children of illegal alien parents. Indeed, the ruling strengthened the original intent of the 14th Amendment. So again, I don't know how people can look at the same case and come away with two different, I get it, we all have different opinions and stuff like this, but somehow or another, the ACLU, which they have lots of lawyers that work there for them, I think it may be all lawyers, somehow they're interpreting this as the complete opposite of what I found when I looked into it. So let's get into original intent. And I wrote, original intent matters. Obviously a play off of Black Lives Matters and all this stuff, but which I don't disagree with. Black lives do matter, and that's what the 14th Amendment was all about. But original intent matters, okay? So my analysis focuses on the original intent and interpretation of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, particularly concerning birthright citizenship and its implications for children born to illegal aliens in the United States, also called anchor babies. It posits that the amendment ratified in 1868 was designed to protect the rights of formerly enslaved Black Americans and not to confer citizenship upon children of illegal immigrants. This research traces historical legislative changes, including the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, and explores how these shaped current debates on family reunification and immigration law. Key conclusions suggest that current interpretations expand the scope of citizenship beyond the original intent of the amendment and highlight concerns regarding the socio-political effects of so-called anchor babies and related immigration policies. So my main points were this. Number one, the 14th Amendment grants citizenship to those born on U.S. soil, but its original intent was not to include children of illegal aliens. It's quite clear if you look into it. Just do a little bit of digging, you'll figure this out. Number two, the term anchor babies refers to the infants born to illegal immigrants, allowing their families to seek residency. Unlawfully, I might add. Number three, the amendment was ratified primarily to protect the rights of Black Americans after the Civil War, without an established immigration policy at the time. Look guys, it was the Civil War, it was just right after the Civil War. I'm sure there weren't a whole lot of people knocking at the door to get in here, okay? There were probably still a lot of people scared that, hey, if we come in, they may put us on the front lines or whatever, even though the war had probably been over for a few years at that point. It didn't matter, it was still fresh in everyone's mind, and I'm sure immigration at that time was probably nothing, zero, okay, or damn near zero. So there was no need to point that out in the 14th Amendment because it was a non-issue. That's the point. Number four, historical references from Senator Jacob Howard and later Supreme Court cases emphasize that the importance of parents' legal status in determining a child's citizenship. So remember that name. I think I mentioned it again here in a minute. Senator Jacob Howard. He was basically Lincoln's right-hand man on this whole 14th Amendment deal. When it was ratified and all that, he was definitely instrumental in the creation of this law. And he had some things to say about it that specifically excluded illegal aliens. I think it's pretty important what the original people, the writers of this 14th Amendment, had in mind. Number five, the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 shifted immigration policies towards family reunification, impacting modern immigration patterns significantly. No doubt about that, and it did change the face of the United States. It was interesting. I didn't know much about it, but as I read about it, the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 basically It sounded like it was kind of a good deal in one way, in that apparently before this Act of 1965, they had quotas on certain groups of people that they would allow in, and they were particularly favoring, European descent type people, white folks, that kind of deal, right? So after this Naturalization Act, they let everybody in, or virtually everyone, with a few exceptions. So that was a good deal, and they wanted to be able to reunify a lot of these families and stuff. I think it really was written for the right reasons. And the way they wrote this act, you will see, they specifically deny people that are here illegally from participating. You can't go about it that way. This Immigration and Naturalization Act of 65 was written for legal immigrants, okay, not illegal. Number 6. The conservatives argue that the current misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment facilitates illegal immigration and misuses taxpayer money and benefits. Absolutely, that's what I'm arguing. Definitely, if you have no citizenship, you're not protected by the Bill of Rights. You have no First Amendment. You have no Second Amendment. You really shouldn't be allowed to have a driver's license, in my opinion, because it's too risky. I think that's one of the reasons that insurance rates and things like that have skyrocketed over the past 5 years or so. Number 7, estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of anchor babies are born annually, creating ongoing debates over immigration reform and citizenship laws. So, again, pointing to the brilliance of Trump making this an executive order, it's going to force the Supreme Court to deal with this. They're going to have to face this head on. So let's talk about background and context for just a moment. The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution has been a pivotal point in discussions about citizenship and immigration, particularly regarding individuals born within U.S. borders. Originally, it was ratified in 1868. Its primary focus was to secure citizenship for formerly enslaved persons, while the immigration landscape was vastly different. With no formal policies regulating who could enter the country. So, they didn't even have policies in 1868 for immigration. That's how little of a problem it was, okay? It didn't become a problem until probably, 1930s, 40s, 50s. I don't know exactly when it started picking up pace, but it definitely has shifted. The term anchor baby emerged in discussion to describe the children born to illegal immigrants. Okay, I think you guys get that. We've already talked about that a couple of times. So here's the key arguments and findings of my research. My research concludes that the original purpose of the 14th Amendment was not to extend citizenship to children of illegal immigrants, but rather to affirm citizenships for those born to legal residents of the United States. So it's not for illegal immigrants' children, but rather affirm citizenship for those born to legal residents. Okay? This interpretation is reinforced by historical statements from key legislators and subsequent judicial rulings. The shift in immigration policy dictated by the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, promoting family reunification, has contributed to a misinterpretation of the amendment, leading to ongoing debates about citizenship rights and illegal immigration. So let's talk about some of my supporting evidence for a moment. Evidence includes historical legislative text and quotes from leading figures such as Senator Jacob Howard and landmark Supreme Court cases that established the role of parental status in determining citizenship. The interpretation of the phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, is specifically examined in the context of legal versus illegal parental status. This research emphasizes the disparity between the initial intent of the amendment and its contemporary application, especially in the relation to the growing phenomenon of anchor babies. So, conclusion and implications. The brilliance of President Trump's executive order is that it's forcing the courts to reevaluate how the 14th Amendment is interpreted concerning birthright citizenship for children of illegal immigrants. It warns of the potential social and economic ramifications of this misinterpretation, including undue burdens on the taxpayers and increased population growth from illegal immigration. I mean, there's a lot more other stuff too. A lot of these people come from countries where they don't do any kind of vaccination, and I don't want to get into a vaccination debate or not, what about that sort of deal, but you don't want people with polio and, what's the other one? I can't remember the thing that, Doc Holliday had, the lung disease. They called him lunger and all that stuff. Tuberculosis. You don't want that sort of stuff being brought up over the border unchecked. And do you guys remember how everyone in America that was an American citizen at the time were being forced to take this vaccination or you were going to lose your job? And then these people that were coming in illegally across the border were not being required to get any kind of vaccination. Isn't that bizarre? So in my conclusion here also, I discuss there's an urgent need for lawmakers to clarify and reform the immigration policies, ensuring they align more closely with the original intent of the amendment and also what's best for America and the American people. So let's discuss the key insights right quick on the way out here. We're getting close to the end, guys. Appreciate you tuning in and staying tuned to this. It means something to me, and it means you'll know more about the Constitution and what it originally meant, no matter what the judges decide. So the 14th Amendment was primarily aimed at protecting the rights of former slaves and not designed to extend citizenship to illegal immigrant children, okay? It was for slaves. Historical legislative intention indicates a need for clarity around the citizenship connected to legal status of parents, and hopefully that's what Trump's executive order will force. Current immigration policies have unintended consequences that challenge societal norms and economic structures. No doubt about that. The distinction made by early legislators regarding allegiance and jurisdiction remains pertinent today in citizenship discussions. Reforming the interpretation of the 14th Amendment could alleviate concerns surrounding immigration and citizenship rights. So that would be a good thing. That'd be a win for the American people. The growing population of anchor babies raises questions about the sustainability on social benefits and immigration systems. So here are some key questions that I think the Supreme Court is going to have to face when they take this case on. Number one, what is the primary purpose of the 14th Amendment? I think, if they're constitutional, their answer will be something like this. The 14th Amendment was enacted to secure citizenship for former slaves following the Civil War. It aimed to protect their rights and ensure they were recognized as citizens of the United States. The second question I hope they'll be forced to answer is, how does this Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 relate to the 14th Amendment? And again, if they're constitutional and honest and not, politically motivated or biased, they will say something along these lines, I believe. The Immigration and Naturalization Act of 65 altered the U.S. immigration policy to prioritize family reunification, which has led to an increase in the number of anchor babies by allowing families to immigrate based on U.S. citizen children. And they're going to have to discuss that further and say, look, here's what the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 actually says. And I pulled 6 key points there real quick, so bear with me here. These are the requirements. If you're going to be a citizen and try to claim birthright citizenship, you need to tell me which one of these 6 you fit into and how you're allowed to do this, because I want you to hear this. Immediate relatives, including spouses, unmarried minor children, and parents of U.S. citizens. So, did you catch that last part? You have to be a U.S. citizen. Unmarried adult children of, that's right, U.S. citizens. That was number 2. Number 3, spouses and minor children of lawful permanent residents. Almost sounds like it's going back to that domicile thing again, huh? Number 4, unmarried adult children of lawful permanent residents. Okay, are you smelling what I'm stepping in here? Married adult children, number 5, of married adult children of U.S. citizens. Number 6, brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. Every one of those requirements, 1 through 6, of the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 that the Democrats are using for an excuse, every one of them say either of U.S. citizens or of lawful permanent residents, not illegal aliens, okay? So again, if you just look a little bit, you don't even have to dig that deep. You can pick holes in all of their arguments. It's pretty damned easy and it's quite satisfying. I highly recommend it. So question 3 for the Supreme Court. What is the significance of the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof? And my opinion is this phrase is central to the debate on citizenship. It implies that individuals born in the U.S. must owe complete allegiance to the U.S. And I'm not talking about just saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm talking about you gotta be an American. You gotta want to be an American. And you got to have complete allegiance to the U.S., which I would argue disqualifies children born to illegal immigrants. Now, I'm not seeing it right here, but I had a quote. Where's my quote? Here we go. I remember I told you a moment ago to remember this name, Senator Jacob Howard. He was around during the Lincoln times, and he was like Lincoln's right-hand man during this whole deal, when they were crafting the 14th Amendment, ratifying it, and all that stuff. So here's his quote from that time frame, and I quote, "Every person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction is by virtue of natural law and natural law a citizen of the United States. This will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, or who belong to the family of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of persons. It settles the great question of citizenship and removes all doubt as to what persons are or are not citizens of the United States." They thought when they made this 14th Amendment that we've cleared the air. Everybody knows now this is how it's going to be. And now, and for many years prior to this, for many, many years, the Democrats have been arguing that the 14th Amendment allows for everyone born here to become a U.S. citizen. And by default, because of the 1965 Immigration Act, they think that means that they should be able to bring their brothers, their sisters, their family, their grandpa, everybody else that's ever been in their family to come in. And like Rush Limbaugh famously said years and years ago before he passed, they're doing this for the votes. They're flooding the border with illegal immigrants because they know that those people, some of them, a vast majority of them most likely, will remember who let them in, the Democrats, and they'll vote Democrat for life. So guys, I think we've gone on long enough here about this. I want you to tell me, what's your feedback? Am I wrong? Am I totally missing something here? I provided you with several different historical facts there, some Supreme Court cases. We talked about the senator that was Lincoln's right-hand man during crafting the 14th Amendment and what he thought about it. Now, you tell me in the comments, what do you think about it? Does the liberals' argument hold any weight, or is the Supreme Court going to once and for all decide on this and set them straight? And they won't have an argument anymore, just like Roe v. Wade. But anyway, guys, appreciate you tuning in. As always, I stand for liberty to the bitter end. I hope you do too.